going on, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of Season 4 here of Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast here at fantasyinframes.com. I'm your host, Trey Edwards, and with me we got the Frames crew with us. We got Brian Ford, we got Nate Markham, we got Tyler Heil. Nate, let's start with you, my man. How are you doing, man?
Perfect timing for me to take a drink of coffee. I'm doing great. As you may see behind me, a little something special happened over the weekend that may or may not should have drawn a taunting penalty, but I can't get a flag thrown, so I'm going to keep taunting and keep saying, yeah, I know overtime rules are stupid, but it is. Hey, we tried. The Chiefs tried to tell everybody, just change it up, and nobody listened. Now everybody's butthurt because Josh Allen had it happen to them, and everybody's sick of the Chiefs. I get it.
Hey, you know what? It happened to Mahomes and Brady a few years ago, and nobody was.
I know that's when we tried to change it. They tried to petition, but.
Well, here's the thing. How about you stop? How about you don't let a team go march onto the field in two plays with 13 seconds left, which drives me. I don't even know where to begin with that game. I don't know if the entire game was one of the greatest games I've ever seen, or the last 5 minutes or the best 5 minutes I've ever seen in football. But it felt like that game was just back and forth, and then the unbelievable happened. To end the regular, to end that game. That was just unreal. And we got our first streaming comment here on our new platform. Yes, we have some type of Russian porn bot on here. Thank you very much for joining us on Fourth and Frames. Exactly. Since you just gave a little bit of enthusiasm there, Brian Ford, how are you doing, man?
Well, that enthusiasm is masking the fact that I'm completely exhausted today, but I will perk up when we talk Dynasty because it's kind of my thing. I like that. I'm down to maybe 2 redraft leagues, 3 if you count Scott Fishbowl. So, yeah, I'm all about it.
Nice. Tyler, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm ready to see you guys' top 12 rankings because I've not seen them yet. And also, I'm a little confused. Is Pat Mahomes just so good that he pulled an NBA and load managed his way to the playoffs and rope-a-doped us all season and then just said, oh, yeah, by the way, I can still do this?
I don't know that answer. I want to say it's the fact that he's had such a bad line for so long that when the two things changed, that he had actual protection, he just would roll out instinctively and then realized that he didn't have anybody deep because they shut it down. It was like breaking a bad habit. It was like every time the smokers that if they have coffee, they automatically light up a cigarette. That's what he was doing. And unfortunately, it was the defenses were like, yeah, guess what? No cigarettes, no coffee. Now you have to make do with tea, which sucks. Sorry, tea drinkers.
I'll tell you what I did not like hearing. All right, and this is my one gripe with the podcast, or not podcast, with the game. Was it Nan? It was Nance and Romo calling that game? No, right? Who was it?
Wasn't that?
Yeah, it was CBS.
It was CBS. No. I think it was CBS. Whoever was calling the game, doesn't matter. They're like, and they were. This is why they were like, oh yeah, everything still goes through Pat Mahomes. I'm like, hey, pump the brakes there, because last Super Bowl it didn't. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It goes through Kansas City. I think Josh Allen is just as capable of Patrick Mahomes. He just didn't get the ball, and Mahomes did what he needed to do. And I think this was a great showing by both of these two teams. And people should kind of expect this to be what I think a lot of people were hoping that the Chiefs and Mahomes with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson were hoping it would be. The Bills are just playing lights out. It makes you wonder what happens if Brian Daboll goes somewhere. That's the offensive coordinator for Buffalo. We'll see what happens there. But Josh Allen, man, what a stud. And you know what's crazy is Bills Mafia out there is known for donating to opposing teams' charities. In fact, if you remember a few years ago, it was the Bengals it was Andy Dalton throwing a touchdown pass to Tyler Boyd in Baltimore, which knocked off the knocked out, the Ravens from the playoffs and let the Bills backdoor into the playoffs. And so Bills Mafia donated a huge sum of money to Andy Dalton's charity as like a thank you. Well, out of the kindness and respect of the efforts that Josh Allen put in on Sunday, a lot of Chiefs Kingdom donated to his mother's charity in Buffalo, Josh Allen's mother's charity in Buffalo. So that was a really cool gesture by the Chiefs Kingdom there in Kansas City and elsewhere. So just a whole lot of positives going on in that game. Mahomes running out to Josh Allen to, say what he needed to say. These are the things in sports that we need to focus on, not the bad, not dude sitting with his lawyer, talking to Brian Gumbel. We're talking about like great things in sports that make it that much awesome.
Yeah, did Tyler or Brian, do either one of you guys have Antonio Brown in your dynasty with the Baltimore Ravens, or is that too far down?
No, not quite, not yet.
Wait,
hey, Nate, you might be able to rank Stephon Diggs on IDP coming up soon. After that,
no doubt.
On that fan.
Golly, I hate him. I was really worried that was gonna just create chaos and something bad was gonna happen to the Chiefs as a result. Like karma was gonna set in that dipshit went on the field, but it didn't.
I'll tell you what. I would love for Lamar Jackson to come out and say no, or just any high-profile quarterback that Antonio Brown wants to play with, and they come out and say no, we're good. We don't want your drama in our team. I don't know if that'll ever happen because people don't want to burn each other because it's not the 1980s anymore. But enough with that. But yeah, we're getting into championship weekend, championship Sunday, I should say. What are your thoughts here on the Rams blowing 27 to 7 lead or something like that, and then Brady just going all Tom Brady, helping to tie that game up, and then leaving Cooper Kupp one-on-one. I mean, that was exciting as well. I missed the game. I was in the car driving back home. But did anybody else watch it or have any comments as far as what they saw from the Rams?
Yeah, I thought the Rams looked great outside. I mean, you can only look so good when you turn the ball over 4 times in a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little rough. And to be honest, I mean, Tom Brady's Tom Brady. Did anyone that was watching that game see 27-3 and think, "Oh, this game's over"? No. If you've never watched the NFL before. So he made the comeback. I don't think that's necessarily a slight on the Rams. They just need to fix the turnovers.
Yeah, it didn't take Martin Scorsese to write the script of, okay, now is when Cam Akers is going to fumble. All right, cue Tom Brady on a 30-yard deep out to Gronk, or a skinny post to Gronk. Okay, and score. Let's go ahead and cue up like the Buffalo Wild Wings where they hit the button and they stop a guy. Like, let's go ahead and cue up a defensive stop right here. Yeah, Devin White, and there we go. Now we just need Brady to march downfield, which he did, and then they did not. So Jorge, the one thing I'll say is that Aaron Donald was in the backfield the entire game. Von Miller was back there. Everybody until that stretch of about 7 minutes, and all of a sudden, the Bucs offensive line was holding firm, and just when they needed it to, and it's that resonates, man. It's got to just watching Brady on the field, but yeah, it was. I really hope. I don't know if you guys saw. Little thing about there was the beat writer for the Los Angeles Post or whatever it is, LA Times, I guess. And they called St. Louis the like a refugee camp of a shitty city. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was, they were saying how that because the 49ers were going to infiltrate LA. And everybody was talking about, so when, Matthew Stafford's wife, Kelly, was buying tickets for people and they told everybody to stay, don't come in. And Dalton Hernandez, I believe was the guy's name, was saying that he wrote an article basically stating that this was after years of just neglect. And they were a refugee team from the shitty town of St. Louis in the Midwest, and just a Midwest city that couldn't support a team. And going on and on. So I am officially a 49ers fan this weekend. Not that I wasn't before, but yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. After that Week 17 game between those two teams, this is the only matchup you could have for the NFC Championship. Just how competitive that game was for San Francisco to climb back in to win to get into the playoffs. Now here we are, same location, same two teams. I mean, I'm excited for this game. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Aaron Rodgers. Let's get into some Aaron Rodgers news. Is he done? Is he going to Denver with Devante Adams or going somewhere else? Because Tyler, I know you were researching some of the cap implications of what the Packers have been doing this year heading into next year. Should we pump the brakes on him leaving, or just from a financial standpoint, or is he at the door?
Financially, that's not going to stop him. That's actually going to benefit their cap situation for 2022. What they did, they changed a lot of his roster bonus to signing bonus, so it spread it out over a couple of years. They added a void year on, so his cap hit next year, I believe, is 40. This isn't exact, is 46 million. But if they were to trade him, his dead cap hit would be 26. So they'd be saving just under 20 million if they were to trade him. So it doesn't get them close to the cap yet, since they're about 44 over. But there's options they have. There's some guys that are either up for extension or that are able to be cut. You can cut Preston Smith, which you don't necessarily want to cut Preston Smith, but decisions have to be made. You can save $13 million with him. You can extend Zadarius Smith. Randall Cobb is a pretty easy cut. If Rodgers is gone, that's a $7 million savings. So there's a pretty easy route for them to get under the cap. I don't think the financial implications have anything to do with Rodgers going or staying. I think the Green Bay Packers want Aaron Rodgers to stay 100%. But it's all up to Rodgers. They kind of made that gentleman's agreement before the beginning of last season.
Yeah. It's
ironically, 20 million is exactly pretty much the franchise cap or franchise tag fee for Devante Adams. Wouldn't that be the worst possible scenario?
I don't see that they're not just going to let him walk. If Aaron Rodgers wants out, that's fine. They made an agreement with him. They don't owe jack shit to Devante Adams.
right.
Just like I wouldn't have Devante Adams owe anything to them. It's a business. It always has been a business. We can't hold players to a different standard of organizations and vice versa. If we don't want the organization to owe the players anything, that the players should owe the organization anything. And I would absolutely not let the best wide receiver in the game walk for free.
Yeah, to quote the late great Owen Hart of the World Wrestling Federation, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. And I'm done. I'm done with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I'm done with all that. I want something new. I need something new. I need some new storylines. I need enough of the drama. Give me some good football information. Give me some good football entertainment value. Speaking of entertainment value, the Super Bowl here at SoFi Stadium, I don't think I've ever been hyped up for a halftime show as I am for this halftime show, and I have no idea why it is, but this is going to be, even if you're not a hip-hop fan, like this is going to be a spectacle on top of just how awesome the music is going to be, in my opinion. So definitely looking forward to that. But enough about all this. Let's get into what we're all here for. Let's talk about some Dynasty. We're going to be talking about our early 2022 top 12 Dynasty football rankings here at Fantasy and Frames. And of course, if you want to see a more complete list of our Dynasty rankings, head over to fantasyandframes.com today. Click on Dynasty rankings, and you'll see all of our rankings that are up to date as of today. So without further ado, let me click this here. Let me put this there. And here we are. We have our Dynasty football rankings overall. We're going to go overall first, and then we'll go position by position. And let's just look at, who we're noticing here. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more easy to parse out position by position. But just looking here, it's not really shocking. A lot of running back heavy. I do see here with Brian, Nate, Alvin Kamara still in your top 12. Is this taking into account the news that Sean Payton's stepping down from the Saints, or is this before that news happened that he's still in your top 12? And if that's the case, with Sean Payton no longer being the Saints coach, does that bump him out of your top 12? Let's start with you, Brian.
Yeah, I'll take that. So I just want to say, first of all, the platform that we use to do the rankings, I rank positionally, and then it kind of spits out an overall, but I don't go in and tweak it or anything like that. Kamara's position in the top 12 is just relative to the fact that I think I have him at number 5 in running back. And this is the first I'm hearing that Sean Payton stepping down from the Saints, so maybe I'll adjust my ranking.
Nate, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I did not adjust post Sean Payton news. Obviously, there's going to be lateral effects from that. I think, if anything, Taysom Hill has to be probably the first one to reevaluate his situation, because I don't think there's anybody stepping in there coaching short of Taysom Hill's dad who's going to leave him at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that answers Ian Book. I don't know what exactly their approach may be. I mean, that's the one thing with Dynasty rankings on, January 26th or 7th or whatever today's date is. There's so many free agent moves to be had, and, moving pieces as far as quarterback and even offensive coordinators and head coaching. The one thing I'll say is that Alvin Kamara has I'm not going to take him out of my overall top. I guess this is top 12. I didn't adjust this like Brian did, but he's got everything still in his favor. I mean, he's 26 years old, still fine. He's in an offense that should revolve around him. Maybe getting Michael Thomas will be helpful. The Saints are a tough team to gauge, because they could be really bad, or they could spend some cash. Let's see where they rank at in terms of cap space. This is where Tyler, I would resort to. But you and I have to scroll all the way down to see they are dead last at 71 million below the cap, or above the cap, basically.
Jeez.
Not exactly the place you want to be able to build pieces around a person like Alvin Kamara. So maybe I should take that into account and realize they just might be dreadful, but that's going to apply towards the defense too. The biggest change, and we'll talk about this, I guess, when we get to them, is how they're going to sign Tron Armstead. That's going to be key right there. Their best offensive lineman, very impactful. We can discuss more further as we break down individual positions.
All right. What's interesting here with these composites of overall rankings, whether they're intended to be or not. Every position on offense is addressed here, at least by somebody. And I think seeing Kyle Pitts in all of our rankings just goes to show you how impactful and how scarce the tight end position is, and how impactful he is as a dynasty asset. So let's just get into position by position. We'll go to quarterbacks first.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brian, let's start with you, buddy. Let's break down your top 12 and maybe give some rationale as to why certain players are here. I see one right there glaring in the middle that I don't think and the rest of us have in our. No, I take that back. Tyler has it in his. Brian, take us away.
So up until very recently, I still had Mahomes QB1, but I think the arrow is up on Allen, and not necessarily the arrow is down on Mahomes. But when I look at the aging assets around him, and him being slightly older than Allen, and his contract perhaps hamstringing their ability to improve the team around him, that's a big change. Allen is QB1 now. I don't know, I don't know which one you're talking about. Who's in the middle? Who were you talking about?
Mr.
Deshaun Watson.
Oh yeah, and to me that's even a conservative ranking. I had him down at I think maybe around 15 for a while, and then at 11. My guess is one way or another he's playing, whether it's 5 or 6 games in 2022 or whatever. And when healthy and playing, he's an elite top 5 quarterback. And so that actually is kind of like a wait and see ranking for him at 8. And when we get more information and he's on the field, he'll probably be up in my top 5, actually. Yeah. And I think some people might quibble with Tua rounding out the top 12. This is not saying that I'd be comfortable with him as my QB1 on a dynasty team. That's not what these rankings are. They're sort of rankings as a dynasty asset. And when I look at the people right behind him that I have, I can't really justify putting them up above Tua. Burrow rose for me. I'll be talking about quarterback risers in my article coming up soon. So did Herbert. They're at 3 and 6 now. If everybody has any questions or disputes, let's go.
I guess my first question would be, and you touched on it a little bit here, that these aren't intended to be quote unquote rankings of players you would take in a specific order. This would be a rankings in terms of asset value, to where.
Well, yes and no, right?
Okay, can you get into that a little bit more?
So, like, a lot of people do their rankings as strictly startup rankings. I don't necessarily do that, but I do have like a heavy slice of the pie, a growing slice of the pie. Is like, what would I do in a startup? So this reflects sort of like their value as a dynasty asset, like whether that means trade value or market value, or what you can do, the production you'll get holding on to them moving forward versus the lower production you'll get from somebody moving forward. That's how I rank them, right? So for example, I have Tua at 12, right? And I have Matthew Stafford at 15, right? Now, in a given season right now, I'd be more comfortable with Stafford as my QB1 and Tua as my super flex. But if I'm thinking about them as like moving forward as a dynasty asset, Tua is for sure on top.
That's something I think a lot of people have to take in consideration in terms of dynasty value. It's not just the person who's making the rankings assigning what value is. It's perceived value of what other people will think, and of course that people can get their information from trade calculators or other rankings or whatnot, and that or just recency bias. There are a lot of things to take into consideration here. Really interesting list. Trevor Lawrence, what are your thoughts on what's his value from your perspective?
So I think, I don't know that I have a given like, oh, he's 2 firsts or something like that. But, I think obviously this year wasn't good. I would like to think that this is a talented player who still has, many years to go. His rookie year was with perhaps the most terrible coach I've ever seen in NFL, with this like really bad schemes that were like college plays going out there. I don't know if he's been damaged by that experience, and someone needs to, coach him up. But I'm not ready to sink him yet, based off this 1 year with the Jags.
Tyler, let's go to your rankings now. You have Deshaun Watson at the bottom, along with Aaron Rodgers. What is your rationale for Deshaun Watson the same as Brian's, or is there something else we're not taking into consideration?
It's relatively similar. My issue with Deshaun Watson is I'm not entirely sure he's going to play football in 2022. But he will likely play football in 2023 unless, he's in jail. Other than that, he is incredible. He's an incredible player. If none of this happened, you would have a hell of a time convincing me to put him any lower than 3 in my rankings. And that was on a garbage team, on a bad team. So I am willing to hold Deshaun Watson on my roster for another year and let him come back in 2023. I've been holding Deshaun Watson on a roster in a league where people have offered me like 111 and 112. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to throw that value away when there's a player of that caliber just sitting on my roster. I'll wait.
Now, one player that is on my, Brian, and Nate's rankings that is not on yours is Trey Lance. What are your thoughts on Trey Lance? Is he just outside your your top 12, or is it something that, or do you have differing thoughts in his value?
Trey Lance is just outside my top 12. He is very, very close. I'm actually bringing it up now. He is, he's 13.
Well,
I like him. I don't think it's fair to put him in the top 10 yet. He's played one game where he ran a lot. So I don't know if he's a good NFL quarterback. Like, sure, he can run. He might have a Jalen Hurts season or two, but Kyle Shanahan's not just going to stick with him because they spent a lot of draft capital on him. I'd like to see if he can actually play football well before I put him in my top 12.
Yeah, and I think that brings up like a sort of big difference with I'm seeing, at least towards the bottom here, with mine and Tyler's rankings. I've become very aggressively ageist in my rankings. I was trying to hold back because I thought maybe I was being too ageist, but then I realized no, it's I'm right on. And so I want to ask Tyler. The inclusion of Wilson, Stafford, and Rodgers in the top 12, given their age. What's up with that?
So, I mean, Wilson's 33, Stafford's 33, Rodgers 38. Sure, that might be a little old. We've seen that these top flight quarterbacks can play until I'm not going to call them all Tom Brady. They're not going to be playing until they're 45. They can play into their late 30s. And, I mean, someone at Aaron Rodgers' level, why can't he play for a few more years? An important thing, I think, in Dynasty, I agree with some of your aggressive ageism. But at the end of the day, to quote what is it, Denny Green, you play to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go ahead and put, Aaron Jones at the top of my running back rankings. He only has 1 year left. But, let's look at 3-year windows.
Sure.
Who's going to help you a lot for 3 more years? If you don't think Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford are going to help you a lot for 3 more years, I'd say you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers, I think he can play for 3 more years, no problem. I mean, he has not had any issues. He's had an MVP caliber season. I hope he goes to a place that is literally anywhere but Pittsburgh and plays at a high level, and I think he'll help you for the next 3 years. So that's kind of where I'm keeping
right.
Just, a little bit of blinders on, take age into account, but with quarterback and a lot of the positions, let's look at a 3-year window.
Okay. And I think this brings up for me that like one of the like bullet points I have about my rankings is that they're not rigid. Depending on the situation, I could deviate from them, right? If if I have a win now team, to me, the value of somebody like a Stafford goes up a little bit, whereas somebody else might go down. So yeah, I think it's all situational for sure. Yeah.
Nate, let's get to your rankings here. And I noticed you have Kyler Murray at 3. A lot of both Brian and Tyler have him at 4. Why is Kyler Murray so high for your dynasty rankings right now?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that playing kind of banged up all year, and obviously when you take DeAndre Hopkins out of the equation, you have to assume that just your overall upside is going to be capped to an extent. But going into the season, he was kind of the consensus 2 or 3, depending upon how everybody, for the majority at least. I was no different. I thought an MVP and a fantasy MVP type season was potential there. The one like area of concern or just a little bit of pay attention to is the amount of free agents that they're, with Christian Kirk being a free agent, AJ Green being a free agent, both the running back, the running back situation. And I think that might have a lot, the lack of running backs will actually kind of maybe put more emphasis on Kyler Murray to even try to do more. Granted, if you look at Arizona and you look at overall, let's go back to what are they capable of building any more around? And that's the, I gotta say, concerning thing. They have a little bit of cap space, but overall, it's, I hate to ever use such a generic bad analysis and say it's still Kyler Murray. because I still think Kyler Murray has the ability to put up those MVP style or types of seasons for, you guys said, the next 3 years. I mean, Kyler's got the next decade potential to do so. And I mean, that has to be baked in. And I mean, we saw this year was the first year that I think that maybe the old like legs, the Konami code was kind of broken a little bit. But I think we'll see that more times than not, playing an elevated floor.
Right. No, that's a good point. Well, let me segue everybody's Kyler Murray rankings and having him so high with mine. And by the way, apparently I did a horrible job proofreading all the rankings, because apparently I made Tyreek Hill a quarterback here in my dynasty rankings. So
well, you never know.
Yeah, you guys, you didn't see the news? Am I the only one who saw it? So cross him name out, bump everybody up, throw in Trevor Lawrence at the bottom, and of course I'll make these adjustments and corrections once we get to posting the stuff on TikTok, Instagram, and so on and so forth. Kyler Murray, for me, I don't think since he's been in the league he has played a full season. Going back to his rookie year, and a lot of that is due to injury. Part of me wonders, is Arizona going to address this offensive line ever? As long as he's there, I know he can scramble. I know he can get away from tackles, but you know what? Eventually people are going to hit him and hit him hard. And we've seen that the past few seasons, he's not been able to stay on the field and be as durable. When we get into the, Joe Burrow obviously is right up there. He climbed up there. Justin Herbert, for me, still, he came in second in fantasy point scoring this season. I think the sky is the limit there. But Mahomes and Allen, I mean, if you need any explanation as to why they're top two, obviously look at this past Sunday's game. But going towards my bottom of the rankings, you got Hurts, Fields, Wilson. Russell Wilson was hard for me to put into this top 12 just because we look at situation. Is he going to get traded? Is he going to go somewhere else? Where could he go that could potentially have an offensive upside? I don't know. If Tom Brady retires, does he go to Tampa? Does he inherit all those weapons? I have no idea. The point is that for whatever reason, that unknown of where he's going makes me a little bit hesitant. But when he's on the field, his production is obviously is lights out. Hurts and Fields being atop of him in the rankings, for me, my thought process was, look, Sirianni found a way to get this offense rolling, the rushing upside going on this team. I think the second half of the season, they were the number one team in rushing offense. Obviously, that helps with Jalen Hurts' mobility. The wide receiver position, currently as it is not great. The running back situation, you don't really know who to take a stab at when it comes to picking a person for dynasty purposes, but you do know that Jalen Hurts is at least going to be there for next year. We may not know going forward after that, but he will definitely be there next year, as Howie Roseman has committed to him being the QB1 there. So I think that warrants him being in the top 10. Justin Fields, this is the one. Justin Fields, I see this situation. I don't think he's as much of a slam dunk as like a uber important asset that people should be demanding a king's ransom for. I think you saw what he did last year. Not great on a bad team. And people, recency bias is a thing, and people could see that and you're like, I don't know what to think about all this. There's uncertainty at the coaching position. We don't know what's going on there. I don't know. I think you could find a trade partner that could be like, you know what, let me see if I can follow Justin Fields for maybe a different position. And to that person, I would say don't. I think one of these things we have to take into consideration is you look at this Chicago team. I don't know if you guys realize, but this guy who's the new GM, he actually used to play for the Bears as an unrestricted free agent years ago, and now he is their general manager 10 years after he stopped playing for the Bears, which I thought was kind of funny. Brings in a fresh mind. Hopefully it's not a coaching retread, but brings in a fresh mind to help with this offense and kind of unleash or unlock Justin Fields' potential. So if you have Justin Fields, I'd hold strong. But if you're the you're the person trying to acquire Justin Fields, go play that recency bias narrative while you can before we get to free agency. Trey Lance, purely in my rankings, just because I will never doubt Kyle Shanahan being able to develop offensive weapons, even if he does just scramble. You know what? Those yards count for fantasy purposes. So I will take that. Anybody have any questions? Brian, do you have any?
Yeah. A comment on Murray. He slipped from like 3 to 4 for me. And I understand where people are coming from. His size and the way he plays, might lead to more injury and he missed games. Correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody told me this in a group chat. Even with missing a few games each year, I think his quarterback finishes have been like QB6, QB3, and QB10, right? So you're still getting, really good production. So I don't know that I drop him that low. And my question is, I thought I was kind of high on Hurts. I kind of, he gets a lot of hate, and I think he can develop, and I have him at 13, right? So if we take out the Tyreek Hill thing here, you have him at 9, right? So I guess my question is, like, what are like maybe your 13 and 14? Like who didn't make it if we're putting Hurts in?
So right. So let me taking out Tyreek Hill. Let me go. So 8, Trey Lance, 9, Jalen Hurts, 10, Justin Fields, 11, Russell Wilson, 12 would be Trevor Lawrence. And then 13 and 14, I have Rodgers and Stafford, then Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
Yeah. So See, here's the thing with Kyler Murray. Going back to what you're saying as far as his finishes, it's great to look at. For me, this is my thought process. It's great when I look at the total fantasy points scored of a player, or looking at the fantasy points per game of a player, and it's like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what you want out of somebody for fantasy purposes. But there's also something to be said of when these points are being accrued. And he always seems to be that type of player who starts off hot, build up a big lead and fantasy points scored, builds up his points per game average. But then as the season wears on, he gets injured, and like, can you really count on him when you need him to deliver towards the end of the season? That is my concern. But I understand the argument as far as when you're looking at it from a points scored or average per game stat there.
So one last question, maybe before we can move on to running backs whenever you want. But since I seem to be the only person who snuck Tua in at 12, I'm curious, just number wise, where you all have Tua.
So for me, Tua is my QB 24.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see it. I see plays happening. I see Jalen Waddle, who we'll get into in a little bit, at wide receiver. I see the receiving weapons for the Dolphins being more fantasy relevant than the actual quarterback. What does that mean? I mean, one or two good throws here and there sets up a wide receiver or a tight end for fantasy success. But, that's one throw out of a few others that aren't as great. That's what I think of when I think of Tua. There's a report that came out today that Brian Daboll is the leading candidate to take over as head coach there from Buffalo, going to Miami. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. I don't see it. But if this was like a 2 quarterback situation in Dynasty, then obviously there's a lot more quarterbacks that are on the radar. But for 1 quarterback league, I just can't justify Tua that early.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess maybe I only play Superflex really, so I guess that kind of different. Nate, Tyler, where's Tua?
I've got Tua at QB 16.
Okay. All right.
So not terribly low, but he's a fine quarterback.
I have him at 16 as well, and
okay.
I would, I'm not a I don't say I'm not a believer in Tua. I don't trust the arm. I don't think the arm strength is necessarily there, but I want to give him another year removed from the hip injury to see just if that has any, any impact whatsoever. If he does become a little more dual thready, I do like the obvious. I don't want to say I like them getting rid of Brian Flores because I don't from a team aspect, but I do think that it maybe opens up to be able to have more of an impact on that offense because I don't think Brian Flores wanted Tua. And I don't think Brian Flores wanted to even give Tua the opportunity to prove him wrong, which it didn't matter at the end of the day. And maybe that's a little extra. But that's 16 is still solid. And the people below him, let's see, who do I have? I have Brady at 17, which just strictly on the fact that, ageism and he could be done. The person who I want to move down the further, and I have him at 18 is Mac Jones, because the more and more I'm just not buying into the fact that I think Mac Jones is a viable fantasy option. If this was real life, this is real life, but if this was who can manage their team, and if you got points for, wins and not turning the ball over in game management, then maybe that's not fair to Matt Jones, but that's what I've seen in my one season.
I've got Mac 18 too, and two names that are ahead of him: Zach Wilson and Davis Mills.
Okay, I like that because I don't have Mills ahead at. So you have Mills at 16, or I mean at 17 or 16?
17. Yeah. 17. Yeah.
Gotcha. I did move Mills up quite a bit. I have him in that 20 range. I love what we saw at the end of the season out of him. I don't know if that offense is, going to get anything positive. The whole team dynamic has to change. That is the worst. I think we talked about this last time, didn't we, Tyler? We basically went into the Houston bashing where just the worst run organization possible.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
Sorry, Texas fans.
Exactly. Thank you for tuning in still. Let's go to running backs here. Tyler, why don't you start us off here this time? Why don't you break us down with your top 12 Dynasty running back situation and give us your take.
All right. So I don't think there's much explaining about Jonathan Taylor. He's a monster. He's on a great team with a great line. DeAndre Swift is very far up there for me. I did not think he was going to be that high for me. But when I started this exercise, it's kind of a window, 3-year windows that I'm trying to look at. But at some point, you do have to take age into account. And I don't hate the Detroit Lions. They were dealt a bad hand with what Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn did to that team. It was an absolute mess. They needed a palate cleanser year to get out of the cap situation they were in. But they have a professional quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and either shit on or heap praise upon Jared Goff, but he is a professional quarterback. And the one position of strength that they left that team in is they have a solid offensive line. So another offseason to get a few more weapons in on that offense to complement a pretty good core of DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Swift can be doing a lot. Najee, that was a harder one for me. The Steelers don't have a great offensive line. They're in a terrible situation. Honestly, I might have already adjusted him down as I tinkered with my rankings. Javante's up there. Saquon, I think, does anyone else even have him up there?
I do not believe.
No, that's one thing that stood out to me. He's still holding strong at 5 for you or 6? Okay.
Yeah. He's Saquon. He's uber talented. I have hope that the next coach they bring in is going to be someone not named Joe Judge and an offensive coordinator not named Jason Garrett. And I think he can still play at a high level. What other big differences do we have in there? Does anyone have? Yeah.
So Camara, again, going back to what we were talking about, we were doing overall rankings. Is he still somebody that you're going to keep in your top 12?
I think he might drop a little bit with the loss of Sean Payton. He's still a good player, though. He's 26 years old. up until this year, he's never really been a workhorse back. They just didn't have any other options. He makes his hay on receptions and touchdowns. And, he's a less than 300 touch guy every year, and he should be. And I'm hoping the next coach they bring in continue to use him as such.
Right on. Let's go to Nate next. And the reason I want to hear from Nate is because he has Christian McCaffrey, the highest out of all of us, at 3. Can you give us a little bit of your thought process there?
I mean, it's how you can't quit something and you want to, and I mean, obviously, he's 25. He has the IL history of someone that's probably 35, realistically. The one thing that he possesses that nobody else on this list, short of maybe Jonathan Taylor, and even then I can't even say Jonathan Taylor, is on a per snap basis, he's as good as anybody honestly at the position over the past 20 years. I mean, it's worthy enough that you almost don't want to. It's the old adage, I hate to sleep and miss out. And I did this. I can go back to, it was LaDainian Tomlinson years. For a decade, I never had the first or second pick. Never got Sean Alexander, never got LT. Finally, it was that last year. I don't remember what year it was. And I had the first pick, and I did not want to take LT. I said, I'm just not going to do it. It's like, there's no way. Everything I think about him, my projections, he's going to fall off. It's a stupid move, and I had to take him anyway because if I didn't draft him and he had another 22 touchdown season, because that's just what he did, I wouldn't sleep really well. And now the difference is if this was 29-year-old Christian McCaffrey, that's one thing, but this is 25-year-old Christian McCaffrey. Would anybody be shocked if he puts up 5 years as the RB1 if he plays in 14 games each season, 13 games?
No.
And that's such a terrible way to go about it. But
I didn't realize he's only 25 years old. I swear he's older than that. That's interesting.
I thought he was 26, but I guess I'm wrong.
Still, he had a birthday. Mid-20s, 25. So. Yeah. And I mean, there's just Ben McAdoo being hired as the offensive coordinator. I don't know what that's going to necessarily mean exactly for that offense, but I think that Carolina's in that situation where they're going to have a lot of decisions to make in the offseason. They have some cap space. They have an ability to they just have a lot of pieces, moving. And the one thing I don't think is going to change is a healthy Christian McCaffrey will see the lion's share of the work. There's no doubt. And I know that's not, again, matter of fact, but I can't quit him. And I mean, short of, let's see. The only other thing I have different is I think I have Eckler down. No, I don't. Jorge, you actually have Eckler below. And I'll hear your reasoning on that a little bit too. And so do you, Tyler. If Tyler's still with us or if he's just.
I'm appalled by Tyler's ranking of Austin Eckler.
Appalled is,
Can you give the backstory because the bold predictions earlier before 2021.
That's part of it. Yes. Yeah. So when we did our bold prediction show, I said Austin Eckler would be a top 5 RB in half PPR, and I checked at the end of the season, and I believe that came true. And he's kind of a my guy, and I'll get to my sort of like take on him when I do my rankings, but I can't. I look at some of the names ahead of him, and I'm just like, okay.
So of all the running backs in the NFL this year, there were he and Jonathan Taylor tied for the most quality plus great games, which is basically scoring more than 10.5 points in standard scoring. And now you throw in Austin Eckler with his receiving upside. This is standard scoring, which is crazy to think that he's that good in standard, let alone with the PPR upside. Why do I have him so low, in comparison? I still worry about the volume. I think that they're going to scale it back. They keep saying they wanted to. They said it this year going in. He said himself, I'm probably not a goal line back, and then he proved all of us wrong that he's a liar, and he just wanted to draft himself higher in his fantasy leagues, which is a brilliant move. If I was a fantasy player and a real player, I'd lie my ass off and tell you all kinds of stupid shit. But
all right, so Austin Eckler, let me defend myself a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
It's a little low. I agree. I think he could be higher. Brian, and just to defend myself as well.
Sure, yeah.
I had Austin Eckler ranked as my RB4 this year. I had him projected out as my RB4. I love him.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chargers are going to find a way to dial his volume back a little bit. And just so you know, other than Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler is the oldest running back on this list.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be 27 in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So he does, he's aging a little bit. I think they're going to dial his work back. He's aging a little bit. They're going to try to bring in someone that can actually do a better job than Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly.
Right. And I will address the Eckler age question when I do my rankings.
All right. So Nate, you had mentioned why do I have Eckler as low as I do? It's not so much I doubt him and his fantasy upside. It's just the players that I ranked above him, for me, just seem like they have more scoring potential for different reasons. Let's look at the two that are above him. Starting first with Cam Akers. Sonny Michel, thank you very much for getting me into a fantasy championship game. Good luck on your next team next year. He's not going to be the 1A unless he may be the 1B, depending on what they want to do with Henderson and Sony. But for all intents and purposes, this is Cam Akers' backfield. You saw the upside with him. 98 rushing yards, his first game back this season. Now, granted, you saw the downside with the fumbles on Sunday, but this offense as a whole is clicking, and all the wide receivers. I mean, this offense is stacked, really well balanced, and I could just see Akers taking that next step there. Conversely, Aaron Jones, you lose Aaron Rodgers, you lose Devante Adams if you don't franchise tag him, and even if you do franchise tag him, you have Jordan Love throwing him the ball, who against Kansas City didn't exactly instill a lot of confidence with me as far as what his upside is in making the pass catchers fantasy relevant. So what does that tell me? That tells me they're going to be leaning on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I like the explosive PPR upside with Aaron Jones over A.J. Dillon. That's why he's ahead of Eckler. And then you're running out Gibson and Henry. Henry at the bottom just because you are seeing the wear and tear, I believe, with him going at the top. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook. Nick Chubb for me is my number 3 overall dynasty running back. Why is that? Look, I think there's a lot of rumblings and a lot of truth here. When the expression "when there's smoke, there's fire," I think Baker Mayfield maybe not as sure of a lock as this quarterback of the future of the Browns, as some might tend to believe. That in and of itself makes me think, okay, well, they're just going to lean even more on the running game with Nick Chubb. We don't know whether or not what they're going to do with Kareem Hunt, whether or not they're going to try and let him go. I don't know his exact free agency status off the top of my head, but I think Nick Chubb is one of the best pure runners in all the NFL, and they have a good offensive line, and he's young. That's my rationale for Nick Chubb there. Any questions here? I think I'm pretty low on DeAndre Swift.
I have a question for the other two gentlemen here. Do either or both of you have A.J. Dillon ahead of Aaron Jones?
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Tyler?
Let me check. I got to check. I know it's close. I do have him above him, yes.
I have Dillon at 16 and Jones at 20.
I have Dillon at 20 and Aaron Jones at 25.
Okay. And Jorge, this is not a knock like, hey, let's beat up
this
Jorge
is interesting.
And
I've been hearing people putting Dillon ahead of Jones. I'm curious as to why, just because of the re-signing of Jones last year, the financial commitment to him, I'm curious, especially for like a PPR, half PPR upside. Maybe let's start with you, Tyler. You have him, I think, the lowest out of all of us here. What's your rationale for having him so low and then having Dylan ahead of him?
So first thing I will say is the financial commitment is a sham.
Flim flam.
He's 27 years old. He's going to be 28 next season. He can be cut after the 2022 season. It would be ridiculous for them not to cut him after the 2022 season. His cap hit in 23 is $19.25 million. His dead cap number is $6.5 million. He would save them $13 million in cap space. He will not be on the Green Bay Packers in 2023. At his current contract, he will not be on that team. 100%.
And he'll be 28 looking for a new gig.
Yes. Yeah,
these are good reasons. These are good reasons. Okay.
and
not being on a team is good at reason.
And I think for me, it's a matter of age. We know that plays a big part in what I do. But when I look at it, I just see AJ Dillon's share of the backfield will go up as Aaron Jones goes down. Aaron Jones I don't have much Jones in my leagues, but he was like a priority sell for me this offseason. And actually, the prices that people are offering kind of reflect that they think that too. So it's been tough moving them.
Let's get into your rankings, Brian.
Okay.
Let's get into the J.K. Dobbins. I think a lot of us are really hoping that he was going to burst on the scene after a pretty awesome rookie year. Suffered that unfortunate ACL injury. Why is he in your top 12?
Okay, well, if you don't, okay, so I guess I'll do Dobbins first. I was going to start from the top, but let's do Dobbins first, right? Right. So I look at, I think this has to do a lot with like the age thing, right? Because Jorge has Cook, Chubb, and Aaron Jones at 2, 3, and 9. I have them at 15, 16, and 24, right? Which means other folks are going to be floating up, like a Dobbins and like a Mitchell. I do think that, yes, the passing volume has increased in Baltimore. But I think when he gets back, that may go down because they have a more reliable running back than Devonta Freeman, right? And I just look at some of these guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb, and I just can't justify putting them ahead of him in Dynasty. So that's kind of explains where he's at there. I'll just start from the top real quick. So JT Abbey, he's number 1 and Swift is number 2. I'm a big Swifter, and he's been, 2 or 3 for like basically ever. And I will go out on a limb and say in 2 years, I wouldn't be surprised if I have them flip-flopped. JT is high usage, high mileage on the odometer runner with very limited receiving upside, and in Dynasty is played, I think, like 90% in a PPR format. I would not be surprised if I have Swift 1 and JT 2 in 2 years. I had Najee in front of Javonte for a while, and my thing here is that Najee was already 23 as a rookie, and he needs a lot of volume for him to hit and produce, right? And I don't think Javonte does, and I think his share of the backfield is going to go up next year. In fact, I don't expect Gordon to be there, right? Which brings me to my 5, 6, 7, and these are the guys that I call a young 26. Although we kind of have some of them are closer to 27, some of them are closer to 25. And with the exception of this season with Alvin Kamara, as Tyler pointed out, basically these guys, Kamara, Eckler, and McCaffrey, make so much of their usage and production in the passing game that they're a young 26 compared to a Nick Chubb, who basically is, between the tackles bruiser and has a lot of mileage on him. So to me, the age factor doesn't mean as much with those three guys. Mixon, I actually kind of was low on this year, and he's kind of floated up. I still am sort of cautious in my expectations. And Akers, I think we all know the talent is there, and he's kind of shown like just in a few games that he's back from the Achilles, and it's not going to have any lingering effects, which makes me even more optimistic for Dobbins ACL, because Achilles are worse than ACLs. And then Antonio Gibson, and when I look at the landscape here, and I look at the backs that I have behind them in a dynasty format, I can't put Derrick Henry in front of Mitchell. I can't put Dalvin Cook in front of Mitchell. Mitchell is a lot of people are, I'll shut up now, but a lot of people are caught up in the can't trust Shanahan, can't trust 49ers running backs, narrative. Well, maybe, but when they find their guy, right? And I think they found their guy. Debo's usage as a runner, I think, does cap Mitchell's ceiling. So it remains to be seen, what next year is going to look like. But I think overall, some of the guys that I have in here that people don't, like a Dobbins and like a Mitchell, is simply because I floated down, guys like Cook and Chubb and that sort of thing. So, all right, that's all I got.
No,
Nice.
I agree. I think that's exactly right, because I have, Akers at 14 and Dobbins is 17, and it's not that far removed just because of the Derrick Henry's being inserted. And I actually, looking at some of these, it does. It makes me not want to go and change these and put J.K. Dobbins in there. But the role that he's going to have, and we've seen it, is that with Baltimore, they need that RPO back that's capable of completing that offense to make them as dangerous as they are. And coming out of college is exactly the fit. I think we've probably said it ad nauseum, is what a perfect landing spot, what a perfect running back to complement that, what a great situation. He ran more RPO than any other running back in college, all these other superlatives, and we didn't get to see the full workload. And I think that's what we might get a chance to see, because they don't have Latavius Murray, they don't have Devontae Freeman, they don't have any of the senior citizen club is letting out, and they're all getting on the bus to go to the other retirement home.
You're not worried about Gus Edwards?
I was worried about him coming into this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's nothing changes going into next year. I still think that if given Gus was scary, because I think the per yard or per attempt number is so staggering. Oh, he's averaged 5 yards per attempt for a good reason. Usually it's because number one, that rushing offense is just dangerous. But I really wasn't too overly worried about him coming into this season. So I don't know why I would be as worried going into next season.
Yeah.
But that's a fair point.
Yeah, he'll get touches for sure, but I think it's not. I don't think of it as like a timeshare or a committee.
Yeah. I think it's more significant than people think.
Okay.
I don't see why he wouldn't get close to 200 carries. I think in 2020, I want to say he got 175.
Mm-hmm.
That was splitting carries between J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram, and obviously Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And they paid him to be there to play that role, to play that 1B role.
Okay.
That's my only reason for not having Dobbins in the top 12, because I think they want to have two running backs in that backfield. Not name Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
There's something I want to bring up before we head over to wide receivers, and it's something that we all have here. Did anybody else feel when they were filling out their rankings that they just by default had to throw in Antonio Gibson into their rankings just because he's a starting running back dude on a team that is really good? I mean, not the team, but the player. Mm-hmm. Or is there like a legitimate cause for I am a Gibson truther. He is going to break out. He's going to do all these amazing things. Or is it just a situation where it's like, for me, for example, you have the Jones and the Gibson, and I have these guys there. And aside from the points that I was making, it's another thing where recency bias comes into being a thing, and people are going to be like, oh, Aaron Jones is a really good player, I should value him here. Antonio Gibson, he played pretty well when he was on the field. I don't know. For me, it's a volume play for having Antonio Gibson in there. Brian, why do you have Antonio Gibson where you have him?
Okay, so I think combination of factors. Despite the presence of McKissick, I do think he's got some receiving upside. He's shown at times that he plays very well when he's healthy. He's the unquestionable lead back in an offense. I happen to think that even though some people say, with the draft capital and the free agency and all that, I don't expect Ron Rivera to enter next season with Heineke as the quarterback. I just kind of just expect something to improve there. And I think also, there's the factor of, again, I've got Henry at 13, Barkley at 14, Cook at 15, Chubb at 16. Like, somebody's got to float up, right? And it's the younger Gibson.
Same thing with you, Nate and Tyler. Nate, why don't you go first?
Yeah, and you touched on one name too, is J.D. McKissick. And with McKissick being gone, we going into next year, I think we've all been wanting to see is Antonio Gibson in the receiving game. We knew everything going into the NFL. He's a receiver, very little work as an actual running back, et cetera, et cetera. As we got to around week 12, that's when we saw the target share actually finally, get to that 7 target, 6 target, 7 target range where, and Brian, like you said, most dynasties are PPR, at least half PPR format. And if you can add that, couple that with an increased workload because there's no McKissick, there are, a few pieces as far as like, what are they going to do with Brandon Scherf if he's gone? Defensively, they don't really lose much. So I think that they'll be in games and they'll probably try to keep a more of a run-heavy approach. I am intrigued to see who a quarterback will be. Obviously, that'll have an effect. Do we think it's going to be one of the big free agent moves or one of the big, the big quarterback changes, the revolving door? Like, would Russell go there? Would that make sense? Would Russ going to Washington even be something that would be beneficial to anybody besides McLaurin?
You know what would be hilarious to not answer your question is if they worked out a trade to bring Cousins back to DC.
Yeah.
Hey.
Bring it on.
But to answer your question, here's the thing. As a Washington fan, I think we're screwed. The person we're bringing back is Fitzpatrick. And I say that jokingly somewhat. And I also kind of think so, just because no one's coming here as long as the team is, embroiled in controversy, is underperforming. They took a big step back on defense this year. Unfortunately, in the draft class is not great at the quarterback position. From what all the different reports have said, haven't dove in too much into that yet. But from what people are saying, so the question is, where are these players going to come from? Where are these magical players going to come from? I don't see them wherever they are coming to Washington.
Yeah, that's true. It's not exactly a prime destination for free agents. Yeah.
Yeah, and Russell and Aaron Rodgers aren't going to go there. They're not going to go to that organization. And the biggest thing with those two is they both have no trade clauses.
Right.
So they have to agree to go.
Right. All right. Let's go to wide receivers. Those of you listening on your various podcast platforms, we are over the hour mark, but we're going to finish these rankings, and hopefully you get something out of it early in your Dynasty fantasy football season. All right, let's go to Nate. Why don't you start us off here? You have Justin Jefferson as your number 1 wide receiver overall over Jamar Chase. What made you decide to do
that? I guess I've seen it for 2 years in a row now. I mean, it's not to knock. I mean, Jamar Chase is the sexy upside, but what we saw with Chase, and obviously, recency bias, but there were those weeks mixed in where T. Higgins was just as capable of leading this team in receptions and having Tyler Boyd. There's a lot of mouths to feed. Obviously, I don't think that means that Jamar Chase, I have him number 2, so it's not like I'm sitting there beating him up and having to justify him as my, 15th ranked receiver. But the one concern I do have is not knowing who throws the ball to Justin Jefferson. So it's as much as it shows 1-2, it's 1A, 1B. I would be fine with either because I think Justin Jefferson's proven that to an extent. I mean, it's hard to say quarterback proof when you don't have to go through the the multiple different quarterback situations that we've seen out of others. I thought Allen Robinson was quarterback proof, and shows me how stupid I am. I was way wrong. But Jefferson, Jamar Chase, 1, 2. Tyreek, again, like with our boom bust, I could easily see a case for him being one like you have. Hell, how do you not have him as your number 1 overall player if he's the number 3 quarterback and your number 1 receiver? Where you drop the ball on that, he's the dual threat action. The Devante Adams, of course, I think we'll have that conversation collectively, considering I have him at 4, mostly because I'm still putting him and Rodgers together. As much as I think Rodgers might be gone, I don't know. I know you say it's time for a change. I just don't know if I see it.
I'm just saying the report. So to throw speculation out there, the reports are that the offensive coordinator for Green Bay is in the leading seat for taking over the Broncos gig. And apparently the Broncos are in a cap situation where they could take on the contracts of Rodgers and Devante Adams if that was to be a route that they would go. That's if there was an out, I guess is what I'm saying, is that's probably the easiest one for those 2 players.
Yeah. Short of that, nothing really crazy in my rankings that I think that I may be missing or including. After we get past the top 12, like we've done with some others, because I see some of the other names just to build credence. I have Jalen Waddle at 13. I have Godwin at 14. I could see Godwin if we knew his destination making an appearance in the top 12 potentially, depending upon landing spot. I think the one, and let me look at everybody else's and see. So Jorge, I see you have him, and I think you might be the only one.
Yeah,
is Calvin Ridley. Yeah, Calvin Ridley. I wish I could put up there. Obviously, the unknown with a lot of different things is intriguing. So, well, when it comes back to you, that's one of the people that I would like you to kind of we could all talk about. But any questions about it in mind from you guys? Any concerns as far as where I have rankings?
So DJ Moore, let's talk about him. He is Mr. 1,000-yard receiver, 4 touchdown performer the past 3 years. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think that's kind of spot on to what his performance has been there. What is this more of like a situation where you're judging the player's talent, justifying him being in the top 12? Or is there a situation here where you're actually thinking that the offense could get better with McAdoo calling the shots here and increasing Moore's upside, fantasy value upside?
I mean, who's throwing the ball is the only thing that really has me concerned. And I don't want to move them too far up or down without the knowledge of exactly what's going to happen there. And that's, compounded. Like I almost going back to McCaffrey because Matt Paradis and what's their guard's name? Trent Scott, both are free agents. So they might lose 2 pieces to their offensive line as well. And if that's the case, then, it can throw all these into shambles. Again, one of the difficult parts about late January Dynasty rankings. But you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm going off of just overall talent. I've been a DJ Moore fan. And, I think that with the right quarterback in the right situation, we could see that the touchdowns, if the touchdowns go up by 50%, or let's say 100%, so we could get to 8, normal for a person over 1,200 yards, that's a top 6, top 5, at least top 10 wide receiving, season.
That's a good point. Brian, I think you're the highest with DJ Moore in your rankings. What's your rationale with him being so high on yours?
Okay, so he would probably drop when we know more about Godwin, who I have at number 9. Godwin is kind of a wait and see, between the injury and what he's going to do in free agency. I could easily have Godwin in probably 5 or 6 in that scenario, and DJ Moore would drop. I think it is a question of a lot of people will tell you that basically talent and skill is the biggest slice of their rankings pie. Other things matter, but that always go with talent. I don't expect, Darnold to really be the QB1 there. I don't know how they're going to figure it out, but I don't expect them to go into the season with that. And he has had some big games with, Sam friggin' Darnold. So imagine what he would be with an actual quarterback. And I think, again, this has to do with me pushing age down, like, for example, Nate has Devante Adams at 4. I have him at 17, right? So I don't know if you want me to talk through, while we're on me and DJ Moore, the rest of my rankings, or I can do that.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, so I think just like Nate, I got J-Jeff above Jamar Chase. Wouldn't be shocked if that flip flops in eventually in a couple of years. I think J-Jeff is safe. He's done it for 2 years. Chase still a little, I don't want to say raw, but he had a rookie year where there was a lot of boom and bust. So I just I don't know that I can put him at number 1. Lamb, again, has had some games where he's been pretty quiet, and people are starting to question, like, is he really the stud that we think he is? I think he is. And I think next year, from what I understand, Gallup and or Cooper might not be on the team, right? So all of a sudden, maybe Lamb's your number 1. AJB, this is, again, a talent thing. And he and Tannehill hook up. He's had some big games, as we've seen this year. They do that play action crosser, and Brown catches it, and he's a monster. DK is somebody who I'm a little about, but still have him in the top 5 simply based on age and talent. There's a little bit of quarterback uncertainty there, but also not a great route runner. And as we've seen, maybe it has a little bit of a volatile personality. So, we'll see what happens with that. But again, I can't put DJ Moore above him. I can't put Deontay Johnson above him, even though I really love Deontay Johnson, have a lot of shares in Dynasty. Debo, has shown, that he is, approaching the status of being, a very, top, almost elite wide receiver asset. Like I said, Godwin would be higher if we knew more. Love Waddle. Loved him going into the season. He eats. He gets targets. I don't necessarily see them bringing in too big of a wide receiver threat when they're they have needs at offensive line and stuff like that. So I think Waddle has just shown every week he's a performer. And then the last 2, I think people will probably take some umbrage with, if you will. Tyreek Hill at 11 and T. Higgins at 12. So, again, I said I'm being aggressively ageist. Tyreek Hill, I think in March will be 28. His compadre Kelsey is not getting any younger. And when Kelsey's not there, Tyreek doesn't really do well. He's tied to a good quarterback. But like I said, with the quarterback, who knows what assets they're going to bring around him. And, Tyreek is a little boom bust. And then T. Higgins, I was struggling it with the 12. I kind of had a bunch of people floating in and out of there, and ultimately I landed on him. Nate touched on it. He can be a really big receiver on the Bengals with Chase still there. And, the guys right behind him, I can't, put ahead of him. Cooper Kupp, sure, but he's 28 with an aging quarterback. He's got a couple, maybe 2-3 years of good production left. But I'll buy the years of T. Higgins before I really, But again, if I'm a win now team, I'm more attracted to Kupp. And and I almost toyed with putting Elijah Moore in there too. So yeah, that's my top 12. Roast me.
What you just one of the last things before you said roast me said is exactly why I have my rankings list the way I do at wide receiver, and that is, if you are a win now team. Obviously in Dynasty, you can take it from multiple approaches. You could play the long game, which is a 3 to 4 year window that Tyler, you kept on mentioning earlier. And then you have the people who just want to win now and then wait for one of these players to go off and then pull off a trade, reaping the benefits of recency bias. And that's why I think, for me, Tyreek Hill is my number 1 wide receiver. Yes, he is a little bit streaky. He had 8 games last year. with single-digit performances and half PPR scoring. So let me give you my take on that in Kansas City. And Nate, as the resident Kansas City Chief fan, maybe you could help me out with this one. But if I want to say this year, more than any year in the Mahomes era, that the Chiefs were like, I don't want to say struggling is probably not the right word, but like, man, they were really trying hard to get a balanced offense going with the running game and the passing game. And for whatever reason, it just wasn't clicking all year consistently. And so you make a team one-dimensional, eventually teams are going to be able to take advantage of the mismatches and kind of bottle Tyreek Hill up. But I want to say that as the season had gone on, especially in the playoffs, Jerick McKinnon, yay, he became a productive running back for the Chiefs. He's still their guy here, and now you're starting to see some balance return to that offense. And what did Tyreek Hill do this past week? 150 yards and a touchdown. So I feel like going into next season, yes, he's going to be 28 years old, but wide receivers, they can still give you top performance into the early 30s. So the age doesn't necessarily concern me there. For me, it's wanting to capitalize on recency bias, wanting to hope that the Chiefs have a more balanced offense attack in 2022. And I don't think there's any other receiver, maybe outside of Mike Evans, that you can count on putting up at least a 40-point game each and every season. I just feel like not to mention, who else are they going to be relying on in the receiving game outside of Travis Kelsey? Byron Pringle, Mecole Hardman, they seem like gadget wide receivers to me than they do reliable wide receiver 2s and 3s. So I still think for years to come, this is going to be the Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey show. And if they can get some consistent consistent running back production, that just keeps opening the stock there for Tyreek Hill. Nate, what are your thoughts here on Tyreek?
It's hard to argue. I mean, again, like we've said, the boom and bust aspect of it was an evolving defense. They just basically said, let's eliminate Tyreek Hill and see what's going to happen. I don't think the expectations were for Mahomes to kind of does not compute and freak out just a little bit. And that's essentially what I saw. But I mean, overall, it's hard to argue Tyreek at the top of that, or even at least in the top 2 or 3. The only thing that's holding back, and I could imagine, is if someone's worried about age. I mean, he's 27, so I'm not really too overly concerned. It just feels like he's been in the league for a little bit longer than that. I'm not going to argue with you on Tyreek being number 1.
Yeah.
So the one issue I have with Tyreek is, granted, I have him at 3, so I can't say a lot, but the Chiefs want a second wide receiver badly. They 3 years in a row, they spent a second-round pick on Mecole Hardman. The year following, they paid Sammy Watkins a lot of money. I think it was $15 million to be their second wide receiver. This past year, they brought in Josh Gordon. They tried to overpay Juju Smith-Schuster, but he stayed in Pittsburgh. They have done their best for 3 years running to bring in a high-quality number 2 wide receiver, and they have failed each and every year. So, they might make it happen this year. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's the question that always gets brought up too, is when you have the addition of an elite number 2, does that mean that digging into Tyreek's total target share is going to decrease his overall value, or does that eliminate the opportunity that he's doubled at such a high rate and increase his overall potential upside? And the duality of that question, or the answers that can be as a result, is what makes that so difficult, because we don't know that answer. We can assume that it's going to be, well, just one more mouth to feed, one less thing. But I don't know if I would agree so much. It's just hard within that offense, because it is so run through Tyreek. And if it's not Tyreek, it's Kelsey. I mean, Kelsey's getting older. At 32, we have to think that if maybe 20% of his total receptions are diversified a little bit, does that change? I don't want to think about the Chiefs losing Kelsey and Hill and getting older,
mhm.
because that's something they will have to address as a weapon. Hopefully, it's not a second round wide receiver. Here, they can. This would be Devante Adams. That'd be a decent landing spot for him. We got $32 million in cap space.
Well, you
Come on.
mentioned bringing in a number 2, and what does that do to Tyreek Hill? I'm of the belief that the target volume will go down, but the quality of targets will go up, just because he won't be facing as many double teams as he would have had he been the sole person there, being funneled the targets there. Quickly going down the list here, Cooper Kupp, just because recency bias, want to win now on a pass heavy offense, has that connection with his quarterback. Enough said there. Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Devante Adams. That for me is still, he's one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the league. Only reason why he's bumped down where he is you have the uncertainty of quarterback play, but talent you can't deny. Waddle I have after Diggs. Look, this guy is the wide receiver in Miami, with a quarterback that I have ranked in the 20s with Tua. He's still, I want to say, I think he broke the rookie record for receptions. I think it was like 133, or I could be, one of those two things is right. One of those is wrong. But either way, he was very impressive this year. Debo, CD, DK, Ridley. Okay, so you mentioned earlier why I have Calvin Ridley in my rankings. The talent is undeniable. People had him as a legit wide receiver 1 for their teams going into last season. Obviously, the personal issues, came up, and he took a leave of absence from the team. When he's on the field, though, he is a game changer. He is a dynamic wide receiver. He is so good that the team said, you know what, Julio Jones, who's been our best wide receiver for years, we're going to finally move on from you. Granted, there are other circumstances to take into account here, but to give the keys to Calvin Ridley, which they pretty much had been doing while Julio had been there also, says a lot. And, now there's talk that maybe they want to move him in a trade, that this is one of those things where the player and the team are wanting to just get a fresh start somewhere. You can't do worse, or maybe you can do worse than Atlanta was last year as a team overall. I think wherever he goes, he has the potential to be just a stud wide receiver. And I think the value is there, the talent is there. And, hopefully he comes back next season. And if he does, just the sky's the limit. Let's go quickly. Let's go over to.
Did you get yours?
Yeah, I did not, but I do have. I feel a little cheated here. Jorge, I think you left out one of my guys. I did not have Devante Adams in my top 12. Instead, I actually had Elijah Moore.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
I almost did it. I like it. Let's get aggressive.
I love it, man. He is incredible. He was so good at Ole Miss. He looked so good this past year, and he had big games with people named Mike White and Joe Flacco and Zach Wilson throwing him the ball. Zach Wilson had a promising second half to the year. It wasn't great, but it wasn't a disaster like the beginning of the season was. So that's encouraging. And at the end of the day, we talked about talent and opportunity. And he is, I know they just paid Corey Davis, but he is the number 1 receiver on that team. He has already staked that claim. And if Zach Wilson can improve even marginally, I think the sky's the limit for Elijah Moore. I'm trying to buy him everywhere. I'm about to trade Antonio Gibson to try to get Elijah Moore and a few other pieces.
So, on the at Fantasy Frames, he's listed as your 14. Maybe it didn't refresh, so I apologize for not having him in your top 12.
Oh, did you pull him off the fan? Well, it doesn't.
Fantasy Pros, not the email you said. Yeah, I probably should have done that. Yeah, that's a good call. There you go. So, great points about Elijah Moore there.
Before we go to tight ends, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say we all have DK Metcalf still in our rankings. Does the loss of Russell Wilson cause that to crater? If that does indeed happen, Brian?
I don't know about crater. Like I said, I was kind of cautious about him, even though I have him at, I think, 6 or whatever. I think it could crater depending on who the quarterback they replace Russ with is. I think that is more if they replace him with a low quality quarterback. That's gonna crater him. Having no quarterback at the moment, I'm a hold until I find out more information.
Okay, and what were you gonna say?
Yeah, so 2 quickies. One, I'm the only one without Stephon Diggs in my top 12. I have him at 16, so not too far out of the top 12. Just something that I happen to notice. And I'm just wondering where you all are on DeAndre Hopkins. Not in your 12s, but like where he might be. I personally think he's a toxic asset, and I don't want him anywhere on my team. And I'm trying to get out from under him if I do have him. So I've got him at where is he now? 32.
Mm.
I'm just wondering where you folks are on him.
I have him at 19, right behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I could definitely see that dropping going forward, just because, man, health and the red zone dependence. I hate this. I'm probably gonna get roasted for this, but like this season, it reminded me he's very Adam Thielen-ish. Great in the red zone, gets those touchdowns in the end zone. But as far as being somebody who's this all-worldly game changer at wide receiver, I don't see it anymore. And I don't know whether that's an age thing. I don't know if that's a scheme thing. I really don't know. It's a shame because you brought him over here for that very reason, and he's just basically helping you in the red zone. He may get you a couple big yardage games, but this season was definitely concerning for me for D-Hop.
Yeah, I don't have him as far down as you do, Brian, and I think that's also just a direct correlation to the fact that outside of our top 12, I didn't do a ton of finagling, and as I look down and I start seeing some of the receivers I have further down, I could make a case for moving up certain people almost a dozen spots. I had Michael Pittman where he was at consensus wise, and I felt justified to put him in my top 20. I think that from a talent standpoint, he has all the makings and lack of competition. The key is, it's going to be Carson Wentz throwing the ball, which isn't necessarily like a death sentence or anything. But Elijah Moore's another name to move up. The one person I'll tell you that's down that I really wish, I know this is not a woe is the team and landing spot. I wish Rashad Bateman was in a different spot. I really love the talent. I just would love to see how high we would have him if Rashad Bateman was, say, on, I don't know, hard to say. I mean, I don't want to say Kansas City, but if we're talking about that legitimate number 2 receiver, just where would he fit in?
If he was in Oakland, what would your thoughts be on him with Derek Carr?
I would think he wouldn't be on a team. He'd be playing baseball for the A's. Probably not a good spot.
Yeah,
I know what you mean, but yeah, if he was in Vegas, where would that put him? Golly, wouldn't be
I have
bad.
him at 23 right now. I think that's probably a little higher than some folks. I love the talent. He certainly had some good games, and basically moves the sticks. And I think I have him over Hollywood in my rankings, and I think the on the field action will reflect that.
Tyler, who do you have higher, Jerry Jeudy or Brandon Ayuk?
Good one.
I asked it only because I feel like both had arrows pointing up at one point, and both had arrows pointing down at one point. And I know we're just picking and choosing, and we're just gonna try. We're gonna keep this bad boy going till tomorrow. We don't care.
I have Jerry Jeudy higher than Brandon Ayuk.
It's by a couple spots, or is it pretty separated?
Jerry Jeudy at 25, Ayuk at 30.
Okay. It's pretty close to where I have as well. I've been flip-flopping those names a little bit.
Shanahan didn't give me many warm and fuzzies with Ayuk this year. If he's willing to just remove him wholesale, like from a game plan, just at the drop of a hat, I don't feel great about it. And Judy is still a talent guy. He's a very good wide receiver, and I hope to hell they get a reasonable quarterback to throw them the ball.
Yeah. I worry that with Trey Lance, potentially, if he gets the keys, that justifying 3 receiving options, considering Kittle's one of them and Debo, that it just worries, limits my ceiling a little bit there. Jorge, where do you have Michael Thomas?
Michael
Another
Thomas.
intriguing name. Because I'm going to guess Brian has Michael Thomas in the late 30s.
39.
Oh, there you go. I have him as my wide receiver 28. Granted, this is before I did not adjust that with the Sean Payton news. Is he somebody that they could offload him somewhere and get cap space? Like, is that how that works? Like, I'm not a cap person. I'll probably, as we get closer to free agency, we call on Tyler's talents here, but I don't know if he's a Saint, to be honest with you. And if he is, that's going to make him drop even farther down my rankings. There's something going on there in New Orleans. He gets the contract, then he has the injury. Okay, fine, but then he has an injury, but then gets surgery like a week before the season starts, and then without talking to the team, he announces on Instagram, "Oh, he's not going to play the rest of the year." Like, there's something really fishy going on there with him down in New Orleans, and I'm not messing with that.
Yeah, I to me, and I have Ridley not too far above that 39, because those are, for me, total wait and see, uncertainty, who the hell knows rankings. Obviously, I mean, I had Ridley going like 7 or 8 into the season, so I'll shoot him up when I get more information.
So I will play the role of Tyler here and give you guys some of the dead cap information.
Yes, dead cap.
13.8 in 2023 with a $25 million cap hit.
Ooh.
And 24.6 cap hit in 24 with 4.9 million of dead cap. So something tells me they're just going to have to stomach it for one more season and then discard. Tyler, is that pretty much the synopsis of what you would say from those 4 pieces of information?
Yes and no. So the one thing that I find interesting is, I mean, they can save money against the cap if they cut him. It's $2 million. I don't really know if that's worth it. But something we just saw happen with Julio and the Falcons. They traded Julio to the Titans on sometime in April, but they said this isn't going to be made official until June 1. They made it a post-June 1 move, which is after some of the bonuses hit. So if they were to trade Michael Thomas post-June 1, they would actually save $13 million against the cap this year. They would still take a dead cap hit in 2023 as well, but it would be spread out. So, I think there is absolutely a pathway for Michael Thomas not to be on the Saints this year.
Yeah, their roster bonus for him isn't nearly as much as it was for Julio. It's looking like $250 and $750 collectively.
Yeah.
Julio's had to have been a lot more, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but you don't always have a roster bonus. Sometimes those are written into the contracts. You can take roster bonus, convert it into signing bonus, and spread it out over the life of the contract. There's a lot of different things you can do with roster bonuses and signing bonuses and salary and void years and all kinds of other crap.
And smoke and mirrors and
it is. Look at the Chiefs are example that I've seen firsthand of that. I don't know that they said there was at one point one of the beat writers said, I have more money in my checking account right now than they have in cap space, or I have more money in my pocket than the Chiefs have in cap space. And it was relatively true. And then all of a sudden restructure. And we can sign Orlando Brown and Melvin Ingram and, and other pieces. So it is smoke and mirrors. I don't understand it completely. Thank God we have Tyler. Hey, we got another message.
Oh,
yeah, another porn bot. They're sticking with us as we approach the 2-hour mark. I think this is like
the
our
official
longest
podcast of Russian porn bots.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to start somewhere, right? We got to start somewhere. I think this is like our longest pod like ever. So this is a great way to kick off season 4. I love it. Let's go to tight ends to round us out.
Speaking of porn bot.
Yeah, exactly. Let's all talk about how we're all on the same page on the number 4 tight end in our rankings here, Travis Kelsey. And for those who may not know who Travis Kelsey is or don't know his significance in the game of football, just listen to this.
Mahomes looks to throw it. Pump faking right side. He wants it. A comeback cut. It is caught by Kelsey. Touchdown! Kansas City. One of the greatest duos in the history of the National Football League. Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelsey on a push fade comeback. And the Chiefs have won this incredible divisional playoff game in overtime.
Nate, how does it feel that the first ever audio drop on 4th and Frames is that clip?
Honestly, a little disappointed. I was really hoping it was going to be flex off and or play something that we've been pushing for, petitioning. And
playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
he is like a kid in a candy store right now.
Yeah,
It's going to be drop heaven or hell, depending on how you look at it going forward, folks.
But yeah,
Will you look at me? I have the power!
You do have the power.
I mean, it's completely unrelated to what we're talking about.
Except he has the power to control the drops.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. All right. So we all have Kyle Pitts, number 1. We all have Mark Andrews, number 2. I am the outlier with the number 3 tight end. You all have George Kittle. I have TJ Hawkinson. This is an age play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
sure.
Then we all have Travis Kelsey at 4. Let's get into here where we start to have some disagreement here. I have Kittle at 5. Brian, you got Hawkinson, Nate Waller, Tyler, Dawson Knox. Let's talk about Dawson Knox. Why is he so high up in your dynasty rankings, Tyler?
Several reasons. So we talked about age. We've been talking about age this whole time. He's 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Dawson Knox was a very good tight end in college at Ole Miss. If you watch him play, that dude's an athlete. He's not just a big blocker out there that is going out and catching touchdowns in the end zone. He is an athlete. They're throwing screens to him. They are getting the ball to him in space because he is one of their best offensive weapons. Not to mention that he is tied to one of the dudes. He is with Josh Allen for, who knows how long. I envision them re-signing him. He is clearly his favorite target in the red zone, and I don't think Josh Allen's going to be slowing down on throwing touchdowns anytime soon. So I know it might be a little higher than everyone else, but I love Dawson Knox.
I had him up at 7. I thought I was going to be a little high, and I absolutely should probably have him at 6 above Waller. Yeah.
I don't think I changed my tight end rankings because I got to tell you, I'm looking at this and I think that maybe it was an oversight because, number 1, I probably wouldn't have had Mike Gesicki in my top 12. I definitely think Dawson Knox, and I'm going to actively do this right now, would be ahead of Dallas Goedert and Noah Fant. And I think I would have him at 6 or 7 with Freiermuth right behind. So live, I'm changing it up.
Okay.
I know that defeats the purpose of having them in advance, but I will say I
good.
must not. I don't care for Mike Gesicki, so that should have thrown me off. Should have checked me on that one.
It gets a little gross at 12.
Well, with the same thing happened with me at running backs. As soon as Tyler's like, "Yeah, Aaron Jones may not have a team in 2 years," that kind of changed my mind a little bit on where to have him. So
Aaron Jones will not have a team in 2 years.
Oh, that's
Ba-doom-tsh.
pretty matter of fact.
Okay. So all of you are lower on Freiermuth than I am. Is it because Big Ben's not going to be there, or is it just you have to put names that have bigger upside ahead of him, and that's just where the cookie crumbles? And Brian?
So overall, for me, actually, tight end is the hardest place to be aggressively ageist because one, they don't really tend to break out until a few years into the league, and two, tight end is a wasteland. So the guys who produce hang around at the top, So I think that might push Freiermuth down. And all for me, there is a little bit of the question of the quarterback, but also he has, except for like one game or something, he's really kind of been touchdown dependent, which a lot of tight ends are. But like the typical game for Freiermuth was like 3 catches, 42 yards, right? And if he doesn't score that touchdown, then what does he do, right? Like he's getting 2-yard passes at the goal line from Ben Roethlisberger, and I happen to really like him, and he will shoot up the rankings soon. I just have a couple guys ahead of him.
Is that the same rationale for you, Nate?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, the one thing that I'm comfortable with, and Brian, you just said it, is he would get the 2-yard pass from Roethlisberger, but whoever, insert quarterback in Pittsburgh, whoever it may be. Of all tight ends, he was second in red zone targets with 20. So, I mean, that obviously with any tight end, I think that's the one separation that we've wanted when we're trying to just pluck any of the garbage tight end into your lineup is who's going to score a touchdown. Now, we look at this. That's the crazy thing is, when we're looking at the rankings and we're seeing the names and we're going down, before season, I'm like, yeah, you know what? After the season's now, I'm like, I would have taken a lot of them. But then when we look back and picked it apart, Waller was bad. Kelsey was good. Kittle was good. Andrews was good. And Pitts was good. Outside of that, any given specific week, these guys, I mean, boom and bust wise, if I'm looking at the boom and bust chart, so many. I mean, equal 50-50. Tight end's a wasteland, but who was, let's see. Yeah, that I was looking at Dawson Knox. I know he had to be up there. 12 of 19 red zone targets were caught for a 63% reception rate. So another reason just to make Dawson Knox even more dangerous overall is his usage, especially if Josh Allen decides not to run every ball in from within the 5. That's going to have to regress a little bit, right? He'll want to save his body and maybe throw the ball a little bit more. So I moved up Dawson Knox one more spot.
Okay.
Nice. I guess another name that jumps off here, and I'm not surprised because Brian, you've talked about him a lot. Brevin Jordan rounds out your top 12. Can you tell us a little bit about this Texans tight end?
Sure. This is maybe my spiciest of the night, right? So I look at some of the plus factors. Increased usage as the season went on, found the end zone a few times, chemistry with Davis Mills, who I believe will be the starter, because if I'm Houston, I have no reason to try to replace Mills when I've got holes everywhere else. I might as well see what I got in Mills, who, by the way, was that some of the draft experts really liked him coming out, and a few of them said if it wasn't for the knee injury in Stanford, he might have been a late first-round pick. So I think some people are kind of sleeping on the potential of Davis Mills. And also, I think I like the thing was coming into the draft, he had a good athletic profile, perhaps, or at least was, more of a receiver and couldn't block much. So, I guess he needs to improve there. But I actually thought, as far as fantasy points and a receiving tight end, I actually had him at tight end 2 and Freiermuth at tight end 3 coming in into the or out of the draft. Now, I was wrong on that for sure. But I think the arrow is way up on this guy. I've kind of been the Brevin Jordan hype man all year, right? I don't know what they're going to add in the receiving game, but it's like Cooks, Jordan, and pray for rain, or to use a baseball thing, right? And then I look at, okay, who are the guys I have directly below him? Hunter Henry, Dalton Schultz, Noah Fant, Irv Smith Jr., Adam Troutman. I like all of them. I could make a case for most of them to be top 12. But if I want to, roll on upside and plant my flag, it's Jordan at 12.
Nice. Speaking of Irving Smith Jr., I have him in my top 12. Yeah, he missed last year with I think it was an ACL injury. It's sad that like when you don't know an injury, it's like, oh, by default, I'll just call it an ACL injury and be pleasantly surprised if it's not pleasantly surprised, but you get what I'm saying. I think this year, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be a fortune teller here, but I think you saw a little bit of a dip in Adam Thielen's, whether you want to call it production or availability due to injury. I think you got a young target monster here in Irv Smith. The question now becomes who they bring in at head coach and an offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Is Kirk Cousins still going to be the quarterback? You look at it like this: if Kirk Cousins is the quarterback and it's a pass-heavy offense, well, great. That helps all the receiving targets, including Irv Smith. If it's a new quarterback in there, if Kellen Mond if they decide Kellen Mond is the future of the Vikings, well, guess what? He's going to be thrown to his tight end a lot for the short to intermediate passes to help set up the running game for Dalvin Cook. So that helps Irv Smith right there. Athletic profile is really good. Young, reliable receiver. Just unfortunately got injured last year, and you didn't see him in 2021. But I think the upside and the sky's the limit for him. Noah Fant. I think so. Brian and I, you do not have him on our list, but Nate, you and Tyler do. Tyler, why is Noah Fant in your top 12?
Hope.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I hope they can get a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if it really is Rodgers and his affinity for tight? And imagine a tight end that isn't DeGuara or
Bobby Tunyon.
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to, throw shade on Robert Tunyon, but
he's unremarkable.
He's not Noah Fant athletically. Yeah. It would be awesome. I really want that to happen. I don't want it to happen for my real football sake, because I don't want to face Aaron Rodgers, but that team would be immediately. If he goes there, let's say that Russ decides wants to leave Seattle, goes to Pittsburgh. What do you think that does for the weapons in Pittsburgh? How much higher would you rank each player that we have on here? Tyler, start it with you.
Deontay would be in my top 12 in wide receivers. I'd say Fryer. I don't know if I'd move Freiermuth up yet. I have a hard time putting him over those guys. But if Russ Wilson went to Pittsburgh, Najee would surpass DeAndre Swift, at least for the next 3 years. I actually just opportunity and offense. To be honest with you, I think Najee Harris is somewhat unremarkable, but the opportunity is very hard to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
Brian?
So if Russ is in Pittsburgh, I mean, Deontay already had at 7. I don't know how much higher I would put him at 6. Freiermuth, I could be convinced, to slide him in there back above Gesicki and move Gesicki and Goddard down a spot. But I don't think anything too drastic. And as far as my take with Fant, as my co-host of my Dynasty podcast said, he gives me a lot of Evan Engram vibes. Good athleticism, not really producing. Now, again, he's had a bad quarterback, but let's say, Rodgers does come to Denver, right? Okay. It's not like they're not going to rely on Javonte a lot, right? And then you go to the passing game and you figure you've got Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, and by the way, Albert O coming up behind him. I wonder where he falls in that. And for those reasons, I'd have him outside my top 12.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think if Russ goes to Pittsburgh, I think you see a flop between Deontay and Claypool. I think we've seen Russ in his deep ball. Looks for those big body targets. I think that, the a la Metcalf. I think you see a flip flop. I don't know if Claypool gets into my top 12, but he definitely would go above Deontay Johnson after. I would hedge my bet and say that's what would happen, but I would think after the first season with him in Pittsburgh, that would definitely happen afterwards. And that'd be a lot more common to see. And with that, if for those who want to see more of our rankings, head over to fantasyandframes.com today, tomorrow, all throughout the off season, quote unquote off season. But as you know, in Dynasty, there is no off season. Just let us know what you think. Follow us on the various social media channels and platforms. You see right here all of our Twitter username, Twitter handles. We're going to be there for you there. Follow us at Fantasy and Frames, all that jazz. And so therefore, for Nate, for Tyler, for Brian, I'm Jorge. We'll catch you next week on Fourth and Frames, where we're going to be doing our very first Risers and Fallers podcast. Look for our 2 articles for Risers and Fallers coming out next Monday and Tuesday to go along with our podcast. So everybody, take care.
I never said thank you. And you'll never have to.